Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Icons of Fright podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Robert Galuzzo. I am joined by my co-host and Icons co-creator, Mike Cuccinata.
Hey,
Hello.
hello.
And just to give context, Icons of Fright is a website that we created way back in 2004. And now we have a book, Icons of Fright, 100 Interviews with Legendary Genre Filmmakers, which collects a lot of the work that we did on that website. And we are very happy to have a special guest with us today. He's the creator of FRIGHT-RAGS. So if you've worn a horror t-shirt in the last 20 years, inevitably you have bought it from this man. Our old friend Ben Scrivens is with us today. Hello, Ben.
Hey guys, so good to be here.
Yeah,
When you
and
said 2004, I was like, oh my God, that's like when we met. It's crazy.
well,
Yeah.
and that's where I wanted to start actually, is because Mike and I used to go to all the East Coast conventions, Chiller, Monster, Mania, and all that kind of stuff, and that's where we first saw a humble Fright Rags get their beginnings with the table. Did you start? You started out around the same time as us. Was it 2004?
Yeah, it was 2003. It was September 2003, so just the end of 2003. And 2004, that August was my first show.
Oh wow. And we're gonna get back to your origin story in the beginning, but I'm curious because what I remember, my vague memory, and of course, back in those days when you stopped at a shirt, your shirts, the early Fright Rag shirts, were kind of more like they were lines from the movies rather than telling you what the movie was. And I felt like at that point, if you were at a convention and you saw "Send More Paramedics" and you got it, it was like, oh, we're gonna be friends. We're
Mhm.
kindred spirits. So were those were those the first shirts? Was that the idea? Was like, I want to do something that's very insider baseball for just the horror fans.
Yeah, that's actually exactly right. Because when I was starting Fright Rags, which when I say starting Fright Rags, it was just I was trying to figure out a way to sell shirts because I'd come up with these designs. So being a graphic designer, and I've always loved like weird shirts. Like I remember walking into like Hills when I was a kid and seeing like a white shirt with a big Gilligan face.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's cool. Like it just seemed cool to me because it didn't say Gilligan's Island. It just had his face there, right? And I don't know. I would gravitate toward those things and I liked design, so I went to school for design and being a horror fan, I was like, I actually don't have any horror t-shirts. I had like one horror t-shirt, it was an Anchor Bay Halloween shirt.
Hmm.
And like that was cool, but I didn't like the print on the back. I wanted it on the front. And so I had sort of I guess, I mean, we all do like a certain taste, a certain, thing. And when I was trying to think of things to do in my free time, I was hanging out on internet forums pre, MySpace and Facebook and all that stuff. And I would see people doing really cool things like making Freddy gloves and Jason hockey masks and Michael Myers masks and all this stuff. And I'm like, man, this stuff's so cool. I want to do something. So I thought, well, I could make t-shirts. I mean, I have some screen printing background, but I figured, well, I can get them done. I know kind of what the process is. And the only t-shirt company that I found out there when I was looking around that was even remotely kind of cool was Rotten Cotton.
Hmm.
And
Right.
and I liked his stuff, but that wasn't me. I wanted to do something different. So I liked what he did. It was a lot of, I mean, he worked with Chaz Balin, who's an amazing illustrator, and he did a lot of cool stuff, and it was mostly white on black with like red or yellow or something. I'm like, that's cool, but I wanted something like you just said, almost a little insider baseball. And was coming up with some ideas, and this was right around the time the "What Would Jesus Do" craze was big,
Oh
and I
yeah.
just thought it
Oh
was really
yeah.
funny if you did WW Hockey Mask D because then everyone would know what you were talking about, and Jason and Jesus, and I just thought it was funny, and I showed my friend Justin Mabry, who was running Night Owl Forums, and now is went on to become the co-founder of Trick or Treat Studios.
Yeah.
We became really good friends. We talked to each other for hours and hours. And anyway, I had that design, and I had just a hockey mask, like a Jason part 7 hockey mask. And then I did a really simple Michael Myers one that said "Trick or Treat" on it. And he's like, "You should post those on my forum." And I was like, "You cool with that?" And he's like, "Yeah." So I just posted them, and people were like, "Oh, that's so cool. I'd buy that," and all this. And that was like the first time I was like, "Oh, someone's interested in something I did."
Mhm.
Like,
Yeah.
what if I sold these? Like, what if I actually did it? And literally over the course of like a weekend, I was like trying to figure out what name I should call it, and I was like horror and shirts, and I ended up with literally drawing, like putting names on one side of a column and names on another, and drawing lines to them and see what it would look like. And fright rags, distinctly remember laying in bed next to my wife going, fright rags, that maybe I'll do that. And then I came up with a logo, which was just like something from Defont that I used and moved around. And then I hand coded an HTML website. And I remember being at work and I ordered 60 shirts, 20 of each design,
Mhm.
and it was $600. And my wife, which we
Wow.
were engaged at the time, she was like, "What are you doing?" Because I told her what I did. I'm like, we're saving up for a wedding here. What are you spending $600 on your credit card? I'm like, I don't know. I think I'm gonna make some shirts. I might sell them. And I put it up and people started buying them. I mean, I have a folder still of all of my printouts from the PayPal when I had to like ship those orders. Like from the first
Wow.
3 or 4 months, I have
Mm.
this folder. And like the first order, until like the first probably 30, 40 orders. And it was just such a gratifying experience because I made something that it resonated with people and they sent me money for it. Like they sent me their money so I could send them this thing.
Wow.
And I'm like, this is crazy. So that's the beginning of it.
Wow. And so your path was just as a graphic designer, t-shirts wasn't really part of it. It's just that you
No.
wanted a cool shirt yourself, and that led you straight to it.
Yeah, well, it was interesting because it was around 2002, 2003. I found Rue Morgue, and
Mm.
I remember I was on break at my job, and I was over at
Mhm.
Borders, RIP, and I was looking at magazines, and of course, I loved Fangoria, but at the time, Fangoria wasn't great. Let's
Mm.
just be honest. Like, it wasn't like the best at the time. I mean, it was okay, but it wasn't like, I'd see it. I'm like, all right. And then I saw Rue Morgue, and I was like, what is this? Because it was a Halloween retrospective, and that being my
Yeah.
favorite movie of all time,
Uh,
I picked it up and I'm flipping through, and I'm like, okay, not only is this well written, but it's super well designed, and like the illustrations and just every bit of the design. And it's the first time that I thought horror and design can live together. Like, not that Fangoria was a poorly designed magazine, it wasn't, but it was just there was something about that. And it's so funny because quick story, I became a huge fan of Gary Pullen, of course, who was
Mm.
the art
Yeah.
director at the time. Soon as and this was again 2000, 2003, pre-Fright Rags. I released the shirts, I'm out there, on forums, whatever. He writes me and he's like, "Hey man, like I love your shirts. Would you be able to send me one or so, like two that I could wear to conventions and get your name out?" Which was an amazing, thing. And I couldn't afford to do it because I couldn't just give anything away for free. Like I couldn't. And I felt bad saying no. And he's like, no, don't worry about it. And he was obviously super nice. Well, he and I have become close friends over the years. He's the one that designed our logo, the one we've been using for the last 18 years. And it's so funny because every time we see each other, he always like talks about how he felt bad asking me for shirts. I'm like, dude, I felt bad not giving you them. Of course, I've given him, free shirts since then. But like, I love that guy. Like, and so it's just cool to be able to become friends with him. But honestly, that sparked something in me to be like, horror and design, we could do something with this. And then shirts was more because like I like weird shirts and I never had a horror shirt, so I just kind of put them together.
Yeah, I
wow.
mean it's hard. It's probably hard for people listening to this to contextualize that like you couldn't just walk into a Hot Topic and buy like a
No.
Terrifier shirt. Like it was so
Right.
it was the same with action figures. Like I remember when the McFarlane movie Maniacs came
I would
out.
know. You could not do that. I would know.
Yeah, yeah, it was
I
just
was running Hot Topics at the time, and you could not. We didn't have horror shirts.
Yeah.
There was not a single one. No.
Yeah.
There was some classic monster shirts. There was some classic Hammer shirts,
Yep.
which was weird to sell to 16-year-olds, but nothing current.
Yep.
Yeah.
yeah. And so it's, I mean, it's crazy. And so, I mean, I do want to get back to the origin story because to me, I love hearing what shaped us. But before that, uh, again, we picked up on you right away. Like we're at a convention and we see your shirts, like, oh, this is so cool. At what point did you realize? Because you probably did a handful of conventions, and I don't know if it was years or just right away or whatever. But what point did you realize, like, oh, okay, I'm selling shirts at these conventions. This could be my full-time job. I could be doing this. Was there a specific shirt or design or whatever? Because I feel like the Halloween fans are so fanatical that if you put out a Halloween shirt, that probably would be
Mhm.
like, "Ooh, this could be a full-time job now."
Yeah.
So, what was it for you?
So I think it was. the famous marketer Seth Godin that says, I think he's the one that said it takes 5 years to become an overnight success, you know?
Yeah.
And so I just, it was really out of stubbornness. I just kept doing it. And it was a side thing. Like it was something that consumed
Mm.
my nights and weekends. And then like, I'd go to bed late, whether it was counting shirts or filling orders and then getting up in the morning and I would take the bags of shirts and orders to my office where I worked and leave them out for the the postal carrier because I didn't want to leave them outside my house. And
Mm.
then I would spend my lunch breaks going to the post office and filling out international forms because that's back when you had to hand write everything.
Yeah.
So I did that for several years, and I remember thinking there's a couple like one distinct moment. I remember thinking it was 2005. I'll never forget this. I was driving home and I was in a snowstorm and traffic was slow and I was kind of stuck and I remember thinking I kind of wanted a new job. I liked the job I had. I worked at a laptop bag company, so it was really small. I mean, there's only like three of us and four of us, and I was the graphic designer, so I didn't design the bags, but I designed like all the print collateral and the website and all these other things. So it was cool. I was like on the ground floor of this company, and I got to see how business kind of worked but it was just laptop bags, which is fine, but it gets a little boring after a couple of years, you know? And so I was like, I'd really like to get another job somewhere where I'm doing other design work. And so I was spending time on my portfolio and resume and things, but I was also doing Fright Rags, And, I was not taking any money from Fright Rags. This was just something I was doing out of labor of love. And it was doing okay, but I mean, I was not going to be making, a living off of this. And I was in traffic and I was like, oh, I got to do my portfolio. And this was even before I had kids. It was like, got to do this, got to do that. I'm like, you know what? If I woke up tomorrow morning making the same exact money that I'm making right now at a new job or doing Fright Rags, what would I want to do? Like, what would I feel like I'd want to do? And of course, I mean, it sounds obvious, but when you really ask yourself that question and it kind of focuses things and I go, no, I want to do Fright Rags. That's what I want to do. So I was like, you know what? Burn the boats. Like I'm not gonna update my resume anymore. I'm not doing anything with my portfolio. I'm gonna stay at my job and I'm just gonna focus on this. And again, it didn't happen overnight, but it shifted my focus. Like, it's funny you brought up Hot Topic. They were selling a ripoff of one of my shirts. Like I saw,
Really?
yeah, they had taken a design I'd done about Frankenstein. It was like a silhouette. Not that it was that original, but it was definitely my like kind of work. And they were selling it, and I was being a little cocky. Let's be honest here. I literally went to their contact us page and I like wrote them. I'm like, you're selling my shirt. This is my job, by the way. I'm like,
Right.
I sent it off.
Right. Right.
They responded in like 2 hours, which I didn't think anyone would ever see that. And they're like, hey, you've got some great stuff. Let's work together. I was like, what? And that was when they ordered the Nosferatu shirt, which they ordered like 2,000 of them. I mean, I gave them a
Wow.
ridiculously low price, and I didn't understand what it meant to do stuff for Hot Topic. That's a whole other story, but like that was pretty cool. But anyway, so then I just continued focusing on it, like the marketing and everything, and I was just soaking in information and learning. And then in 2007, we were visiting some friends of ours, and he's like, "Oh, how's the shirt business?" And I'm like, "It's going good." He goes, "Can you just quit your job now?" And we had just had my daughter like in 2006, and she wasn't even a year old yet. And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know what that means. Like, I don't know how that
Mhm.
looks. I've never taken money from this. I have an account that has Fright Rags money in it, but I don't know if I could live off that. So I thought, this is interesting. This is back when online savings accounts were like 5% interest, which is insane, right? So I
Mm.
opened up a savings account at a bank that I didn't have any other money in, like a personal or business money. HSBC, I think it was. They had 5%. And what I did was I said, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to automatically withdraw my take home pay from this Fright Rags account and put it in that account every Friday. And don't change another thing. I'm going to keep working. I'm going to keep doing Fright Rags and I'm just going to let it ride. And I did that. And that was in August of 2007. And I just kept doing my thing. I mean, I would check the account, because I was, like to see the money grow. And by January, I was like, wait a minute, I have not changed anything in my business. Nothing has suffered. I haven't run out of money. I haven't, gone belly up because I paid myself. And so by January, I realized I have about 5 or 6 months of income built up and I could do this. So I made the decision to, well, and the other thing was there was a graphic design firm that I really liked. It was just a like a this woman owned it was just her and like one other person. I always wanted to work with her and she didn't have any positions when I was interviewing years before. She had a position for like a junior designer that she needed just part-time help with and I interviewed her and she's like, you know, I was a because I'd been working for a while, I was a little overqualified. She just wanted some entry level person, but I was like, I don't care. Just I want the job because I'm doing this other thing. So at that time in 2008, it was February, I left my job. I went to work with her part time. It was like 20 hours a week, just so I could like step off gradually.
Yeah.
And I hired my first employee. It was one of my best friends. He would come over to my house to fill orders and like count shirts and stuff while I went to work for a few hours and then came back. And that lasted from February 2008 to July. And by the time July came, I told her, I said, honestly, I need to quit. I need to do this thing full time. All of my energy and all of my, like, I would get to my job and I would check my emails. I would get to my job and, I would do my work, but I was consumed with this thing and it was working. So I said, I'm just going to legitimately like burn everything down and go this way. And that was, what is that, 18 years ago this year? I mean, I was 18 years
Wow.
ago this month, I quit my full-time job to do that. So,
Wow. I mean, again, the early to mid 2000s was such a different time period, and I love that we all were gravitating towards the word fright because it was Mike who came up with icons of
yeah,
fright. It just had a
Icons
nice
of
love
Fright.
ring to it. Fright rags. I don't know.
yeah.
It's the classy word. Um, but yeah. So I mean, so okay. So now it's a full-time thing post 2007. And what I love about what's been fun to see from our vantage point, obviously we've seen you at all the conventions and doing all these incredible designs and then expanding to things like pajamas and baseball tees and hats and all that. But now, not to jump too far ahead, but Fright Rags is kind of beyond t-shirts. Like, at what point did you decide, okay, the t-shirts is doing their thing, fans are buying them, but I want to do stuff that's like coloring books, like something that's kind of kitschy, like a Silent Night, Deadly Night coloring book, which I own. It's like, at what point did you realize that horror fandom. I guess this all goes hand in hand, right? Because I call it hot topic culture, even though
Yeah.
it's not. But it's like all of a sudden now there's all these. Again, I wish we had these kind of cool, quirky things that were involved with horror while we were growing up, but we didn't. We didn't even have the action figures yet. So when did you get a sense? Okay, we could do things like a viewfinder and coloring books and all that.
That's a good question. Well, first of all, it all was born out of just what you said, like not having that stuff growing up. And so when we think of ideas, if I'm here in my house thinking of ideas on my own, or if I'm talking with people that work with me and, Tansky, as you know, and other people, when we're sitting around discussing ideas, it's what do we want? I mean, we're fans, you know what I mean? Like we're making stuff for ourselves. We're not just some company going, what do the people want? We're like, what do we want? And then we hope other people want it. So, for example, I was walking through a sourcing show in Las Vegas. I was there. This was, I don't know, 2015, 2016, or whatever it was. And I was like, oh, this company does cool socks. I'm like, huh, I'd wear horror socks. What if we put Michael Myers on them, right? Like, it's funny. My wife bought me this pair of lounge pants from Kohl's. They're like the most comfortable thing ever. They're just regular black lounge pants. They're like ridiculously comfortable. Like, this was like 10 years ago or so. I'm like, but what if these were horror lounge pants? I like them. I would wear them. And I literally bought one of every size and sent them to our factory in China and said, I want these. Make these, and I want you to put these types of designs on them. And obviously, the other component is we have to figure out what we can do with our licenses and if they'll let us and that type of thing. But the
Hmm.
spark always comes from what do we want? Like when you mentioned the Silent Night, Deadly Night activity book and coloring book, that was something that, Tansky and I were sitting around and talking about Christmas. And I was like, I had coloring books as a kid, but for some reason, Christmas coloring books. I don't know if it was the anticipation of Christmas Day. So here I am coloring Santa and all this other stuff. I think it was just a way of just being like so excited about the season. it just they went together, and he felt the same way. And we're like, what if we did that for Silent Night, Deadly Night? Like, how amazing would that be? Like, follow the guy's head with the toboggan. And it's just like, how sick and twisted and amazing would that be? Same thing with trading cards. I'm like, as a kid, I wasn't into sports, so I loved baseball cards, but I didn't like baseball. I didn't collect them, but I loved the idea of it. It was so cool to me. And of course, there was movie cards. We had the Fright Flicks cards as kids,
Yes.
which were cool. And
Mhm.
there were some cool movie cards, Jaws 2 and things like that. But I mean, I wanted Halloween movie cards. I wanted Evil Dead movie cards. So then it just became, well, can we do it? Like, and we found like literally the one person in the country that still does wax wrappers. He had to get machines that were decommissioned in the early 90s because they went to all the flow wrap and
Yeah.
re-engineer them and figure out like the wax and all that. And he does them for tops, he does them for everything. And work with him. He's just in Vermont, which is amazing. He's great. But he does all that stuff for us because we want the vintage feel. So
Yeah.
it's really about like what sparks us, you know?
Well, and you hit on an interesting thing that I don't think anyone really thinks about, which is licensing. There are quote unquote licensing shows.
Mhm.
Basically, you can't just put Michael Myers on a shirt. You can't just put these Freddie in particular. I know New Line and Warner Brothers are very protective
Mhm.
of him.
Yeah.
So at
You know,
what point did
but back in the day, Rob, that convention scene was a bit of a Wild West situation
oh
where you
yeah
could walk
Yeah.
in and you could find Freddie on things, and I'm
It
just
still
gonna I
is.
was gonna it still is. So
Yeah.
did you ever get into a little bit of trouble in the beginning, Ben? Was there
Oh yeah.
ever
Oh yeah.
who was the first to come and say, you can't be doing this. You're getting a little
So
too
interesting
big.
enough, sorry, hold on a second. Interestingly enough, um, the first one was for our first shirt ever, the What Would Jason Do shirt.
Oh,
So
uh,
we had the hockey mask, on it, and it was a Jason Part 7 hockey mask. It had the cut on the side, it had the one triangle and everything like that. You could tell it was Jason hockey mask. And so I had been selling that shirt this was 2003 when we started, and this was 2005. So it was almost exactly 2 years later that um, I got this scary email from the lawyers at New Line Cinema. This was before Warner Brothers took them. They combined with Warner Brothers, and it was this long email about how you need to destroy your inventory and send us 3 times the profits you've made and give us all these records and blah 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 blah. It was like, holy
that's
crap.
scary.
It was
That's
really
scary.
scary. And I didn't know what I was doing, and I couldn't afford a lawyer. And this is like a whole thing. Funny enough, I mean, again, I had, I don't know, I look back and go, man, you had some brass ones. Because I just wrote them and I said, look, it's a parody. Like, and you know what I'm gonna do? Because they gave me a list of their, and again, I say this in quotes, maybe it's true, but their trademarks on the Jason hockey mask, the eye shape, the number of holes or the hole shape, the shape of the mask, the triangle, the chevron and triangles, all that. This is what we own. I said, fine, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to make a hockey mask that doesn't have any of that stuff. So I'm going to change the shape. I'm going to change the eyes. I'm going to change the number of holes. I'm going to do this. And I made what essentially looked like an alien hockey mask. But you know, when you walk into those drugstores and they're on Halloween and you see
yeah.
killer hockey mask,
Good.
that's exactly what I did in my own way. And I slapped it on there and I said, I'm going to sell this. You can't do anything about it, essentially. I don't think I said those words, but like I basically came back to them and I didn't give them any other reports or anything. And they said, okay, just don't call it Friday the 13th. I'm like, I never did. I just said, what would
Mm.
WWJD is what I called it. So the funny story about that is, it'd been selling well. And then I put on Justin's forum, Night Owl forums, I said, hey, got to redesign it. Here's the new design. I'm thinking about selling this one. And everyone's like, oh, that's awful. That's awful. It looks bad. I'm like, I know it does, but like, I don't want to
Yeah.
get sued.
Right.
I put it out anyway. This was right around the time that Hot Topic had ordered that Nosferatu shirt. I sent that over to the buyer. He's like, we want this. They ordered like, I think 900 or 1,000 to a test. And then they did so well, they ordered like 3,000 of them. And then and again, we had to print those and fold them to a certain specification and put the size stickers on them and tag them and box them in a specific way and ship them all within like 3 weeks, by the way. And
Wow.
it's that's a whole other thing. As soon as we delivered that order, they ordered another 3,500 and we had to do it all over again. Like it was insane. It
That's
was
of the
crazy.
redesign one too, right?
That was the redesign.
Yeah.
And then Judah Friedlander
Wow.
ended up wearing it in 30 Rock a couple years
Oh
later.
yeah.
And
Yeah,
that was another
wow,
bump.
wow.
Yeah, yeah. So it
That's
was
so
just,
cool.
it was wild. But it was all because we got a cease and desist from New Line. But I've gotten them. I've had to sell out of court a couple times. It's funny, I actually got a cease and desist for Silent Night, Deadly Night. We had been doing that stuff back in 2010 because
Mm.
no one really had the rights. Like it was hard to track down.
Yeah.
And a couple years later, we reissued one of our shirts and we got this, again, scary letter. And at the time, I was working with Larry Zerner, who played Shelley in Friday 13th Part 3's, entertainment lawyer out in LA.
Mhm.
And I said, "Hey, here's a letter." He's like, "Okay, I know that lawyer. They're like 10 floors down from me. I'll talk to them, whatever." He's like, "Here, give all the reports, do all the stuff." So I did all the stuff. I sent them the reports. I was gonna owe like 7 grand. Like, and,
Mm.
and that's money in
Yeah.
2013. I mean, that was a lot of money. I couldn't just like that. I was just like, all right, whatever, you got caught. And weeks go by, I hit up Larry and I'm like, what's going on? He's like, hey, ball's in their court. Don't like, we're not gonna go ask him what's going on. Let him, whatever. Nothing ever happened. A year later, uh, friend of mine, well, you guys probably know him, Damien from Mezco.
Mm.
He was like, hey, do you want the Silent Night Deadly Night license? And I was like, I mean, I would. He's like, we've been talking to the, producer that has the rights to it. And I was like, I mean, I would like the license. So I get on the phone with Scott and we talk. He's such a great guy, and we're talking, and it's a great conversation. And we were going to do a deal. And I was like, Scott, I got to tell you something. Because he was telling me how he had to go after all the companies that were um, basically the original producer, Ira Barmack, was charging him to try to get licensing out there. And he had to stop all the people that were doing it unlicensed so they could defend the trademark and all that. I said, Scott, I just got to tell you, man, like I was one of the companies like your lawyers came after, and I'm on the hook for like 7 grand here, so I don't know what you want to do. He's like, oh, those lawyers were idiots. They didn't know what they were doing. Don't worry about it. Just give me a little extra in the advance. I'm like, oh my God. And we've been great friends ever since. That was like 12 years ago. But yeah,
Yeah.
so sometimes it works out.
Wow. But yeah, so for a broader sense, just so people
Sure.
who don't know this world, there are licensing shows. I guess it's the equivalent of a convention. Like, is
Oh,
that
it's a big
I went
convention.
yeah, I went to one and I was kind of confused by the
Yeah.
whole thing. But
Sure.
basically it's like a convention, but it's all these companies and studios, and you walk by them and you see the logos of what, hey, do you want to license Bill and Ted? Like we have the rights to anything Bill and Ted
Mhm.
related. So I guess if you can give us a quick, what does that mean? That means, like you were saying, we have to understand if we can do
Mhm.
cards or different things. So do people only have licenses for shirts, for, I don't know, somebody's likeness? I know at some points you've had to change, even that's why you do silhouettes sometimes, because you can't
Mhm.
use a certain actor's face.
Yep.
What is the licensing show like, and what are the kind of parameters that you have to work around?
Yeah, I mean, the licensing show, like you said, it's just all companies. I mean, it's not just movies and entertainment. I mean, it's for everything. And, you go in there and for the licensing show itself, like, and you probably know this because you were there at that one time, but like you have to have meetings booked in advance. Like you can't just walk up to Universal Studios and be like, I want to meet and get a license. They'll be like, who are you? Like they have like these booths are so massive, and you have like receptionists of like, okay, what's your name? And then like go sit in the waiting area, and they usually have like a coffee thing there. And it's like some of these people spend a ton of money on this stuff. And
Yeah.
usually, I mean, nowadays it's people we already know and work with. We're just going there to see them for these half an hour. It's like speed dating. It's half an hour meetings. You just go in there and sit down and, okay, how's business? It's going good. This is the new stuff we have this year. Oh, that's cool. Sometimes you get like a preview of a movie that's coming out and stuff like that.
Mm.
It can be really cool. But most of the business happens over the phone or email anyway, like throughout the year. But in terms of licensing, yeah, like if we want a title, obviously you have to find out who owns the copyright. And in the case of, let's say Universal Studios is a good one. They're a company that, okay, they handle all the licensing themselves. They don't have like a company that does it for them. A lot of times, other companies will use like a broker. So like they don't want to handle licensing themselves. So they hire this company, like an agency, that does it for them, and that agency might handle lots of titles from lots of different companies. But in general, like for Universal, we'll say, okay, we want these titles. And something like Universal, they will give you multiple titles in one deal, as opposed to some other companies like Sony it's literally a one title per deal. You can't group them together. So that's
Gotcha.
one complexity of that. And then it's what categories you want. So is it t-shirts and apparel? And a lot of times, like the reason why we can't do kids shirts is that's a whole other category, and that has another restrictions, stipulations to it that we don't want to get into right now because we don't think it's worth it for us. Even though it'd be fun, there's just more to it. Um, we want, trading cards. We want this, we want that. But it comes with, well, what can we use? So for like Universal Studios, we can't use any likenesses unless we have permission from the actor, um, which we've done on several occasions, which is a separate deal that we have to go to them directly for. Like, for example, we at Halloween 3 from Universal, we couldn't use Tom Atkins, but because we know Tom and we can hit him up and be like, hey, Tom, you cool with us doing this and get a written, thing from him, then they're okay with it. Because they don't want to get sued. But they will give you assets. They will say, here's a bunch of images and stuff you can use. So if that has an actor or actress on it, you can use that and you can maybe color it or something, but you can't redraw it. You might be able to add a filter to it, but you can't. There's a lot of limitations. So, like with trading cards, we can't do anything with Universal stuff because there's not enough images for any of those movies. We can't just use screenshots from the movie. Other titles, you can do whatever you want. Use any likenesses, you can use any screenshots. It's like free for all. But in general, you have a certain amount of categories that you ask for and you negotiate, and everything comes with an upfront payment. So, you have to pay in advance, in advance against royalties. So just easy math, if we pay $5,000 up front for a 10% royalty, then we don't pay them additional money until we hit gross sales of 50,000 because 5,000 is 10% of 50,000. Once we hit gross sales of 50,000, we start paying 10%, royalty. But advances vary wildly, and even royalty rates are between 10 and 15%, sometimes higher. So you have to factor that in. And then you only get the deal for usually 2 years. So now you had the clock starts, and anything you do has to get approved by the company. So you know the limitations, or you think you know the limitations. You do your work, you do the designs, you send them in, and then you got rounds of revisions or notes or this or that. And only when they approve it, then you can send it or you can start selling it. In companies like Universal Studios, if you're using a factory outside of the US, they have to be what's called BSCI compliant. So it's a whole set of rules. If they don't have that paperwork, now that factory needs to get audited. And once they get audited, if they find problems, which they always do, they have to correct those before we can use that factory. And then some other companies like Universal, they want your products tested. So now we have to send these things in for Prop 65 testing, lead, all that stuff. So you have to pay for that and wait for those results. So it's like this, it's a lot. And then you have to put them on your business insurance too. They usually want like a 3 to 5 million umbrella policy that you add their name to. So just in case anything happens, they're covered. So it's a lot of stuff just to be able to sell a t-shirt or a lunchbox or something.
Yeah, it's insane, and I'm sure people don't even think about
Yeah.
any of that stuff. I guess that's
No.
why some of your titles go out of print, right? Is because you have a license for X amount of time,
Yeah, I
and
mean,
then
we
that's it.
renew licenses a lot, but it's funny. Like we just put up yesterday, we had a deal in Max that it covers all the Halloween sequels from part 6 to up through Halloween Ends, right?
Yeah.
And that well, the deal technically ended in December, but whenever a deal ends, if you don't renew it, you generally get a sell-off period. That means you can't make anything new. Like if you have existing inventory, you need to sell it off, or you can't submit a new product for approval or anything. You're just basically selling off what you have. You have that time. And we kind of did this thing. We did a sale. We're like, look, all of these are going away. It's sort of like Netflix, like leaving soon.
Yeah.
And someone's like, if they're print on demand, which some of our shirts are now, like, why don't you just leave them up forever? It's like, no, like you don't understand. The license is ending. We didn't renew. So we can no longer sell these legally once that date is ended. Like we have to then take them away and they are no longer available. So and I get it. People don't understand because why would they? Why do they need to? But sometimes you forget because you've been in it so long, and then you're doing this thing, and people are like, "Why is that?" And I'm like, "Because of this." And like, "Oh, I guess you wouldn't think of that."
Yeah, no, the likeness thing is the one that I don't think anyone factors into at all. And
Mhm.
I remember when Scream Factory had done their Psycho 2 and 3 releases, which I ended up doing very minimal work on. I was just so burnt on Psycho stuff at the
Mhm.
time. But I had seen original art for 2 and 3 that they had commissioned, which I thought the 2 one was okay. 3 one was awesome. It was like Norman sitting like surrounded by corpses and stuff. It was like crazy.
That's cool.
And they couldn't use it. Like I don't know if it was the Perkins estate or whatever, but there
Mhm.
was something that said they could not use it because of Perkins' likeness. And again, I don't know who runs that now or if it was a miscommunication or whatever. So it ended up being the slipcase is just the posters, the original posters of
Yeah.
it. And but then I see there's a Psycho 2 release in Spain that has this beautiful drawing of Anthony Perkins on it. So I wonder if that's maybe a different
Yeah.
because it's a different country, maybe they have different rules in terms of
Yeah,
likeness
they
and what
do
they can get away
actually.
with.
Yeah, they
Yeah,
definitely have different rules and rights in other countries. So yeah.
right. Yeah. Whereas I think the Arrow Psycho 2 is just a silhouette of him. And I was
Yeah.
like, I know why that is because they
Yep.
can't use his picture, which is crazy.
Yeah.
Um, I have the Pyromaniac record right there, and I'm gonna go grab it. But I want you to tell Mike what the Pyromaniac record is because you are putting out records now too.
All right. Mike, do you know
Told
what
me
this
about
is?
this.
Okay.
Rob just went over with me. I saw your teaser a few weeks
Yeah.
ago
Okay.
for it, and I was like, wait, what is this? And I didn't follow up. So this is all new to me.
Okay, so I'll rewind just a little bit. Like back in 2017, we made a short film called November 1st. It was like, what does Michael Myers do on November 1st? And it was a fun thing. And the reason why we made it is because we had PJ Souls here in town for an event, and we actually had her cameo in it, which was awesome. And we showed it before we showed Halloween, and she was here for this event. So it sparked us this idea of like, like it would be fun to do this like every year because we do we've been doing this thing called Saturday Night Rewind at a local theater where we show
Mhm.
movies. We were doing it every month. I mean, COVID kind of messed everything up, and since then we've been doing it every other month or mostly in October. But we were showing movies and doing this. So we had sort of a venue to sort of show these short films. So the following year we did it with Night of the Living Dead. We had Russ Striner. We went down to Evans City Cemetery and had him there. It was really cool. And then a year after that, we did one about Nightmare on Elm Street, and we had Sky Alabar, who was in Greasy Strangler in it. So 3 years in a row, we had done this. And then COVID hit, and we hadn't done anything. So a couple of years ago, we were thinking about like, it'd be cool to do this again. It'd just be cool to make another short. And we were trying to figure out an idea, and we thought of this idea of doing like an early 80s Lost slasher trailer. Like this is a movie that once you see the trailer, it's like, oh yeah, like it's almost like you remembered that movie because it looks so
Mhm.
authentic that it came out in like 82, 83, right? And Tansky, who works with me and Rob knows, came up with this idea of like, there's never been a killer firefighter. There was like, Maniac Cop, and you've got the Bloody Miner from My Bloody Valentine and stuff, but there was never like a firefighter. I'm like, oh, Pyromaniac, that would be a cool name. And he came up with this like cool backstory. And this was like 3 years ago. And Eric, who works with me, he used to work at the theater. He does the stuff with us with the screenings and everything. I hired him to work with us during COVID because we were getting really busy and we needed another person. And he's been like family to us anyway, like our whole group. Like he came to California with us because I wanted someone to film when we did the Halloween 40th convention and everything. So fit right in. But he's incredibly talented filmmaker, and he's the one that directs all of our shorts and everything. So we had started talking about we want to do this. And in 2023, we really like we're thinking, okay, we're gonna do this. And 24 comes, and it was mostly on him to sort of get all this together. I told him, I said, I want you to like really head this up, like obviously we'll be helping, but I want you to lead the charge, if you will. And he was putting it together, but it's kind of coming together slow. And at the end of last year, we were like, of 24, I should say, we were like, okay, we got to put this out in 2025. Like we have to do it. Like, let's do this because we're all stoked about it, but we really have to come together and do this. And so early last year, he started filming and he got this outfit and he worked with his friend and like I would go help and stuff, and like we were all just helping, and he would show us cuts, and we would talk about it and what needs to change and whatever. And then I was like, at the time, I was just kind of, I love making music. I used to be in a band, and just it's a passion of mine. I love playing guitar and everything. And I was just messing around on my iPad one night here on GarageBand, and I'd been thinking about Pyromaniac. I'm like, oh, it needs a cool soundtrack or something. And I just came up with a real quick, like, synth riff on my iPad, and I was like, "Oh, it's cool." It was like 10 seconds, And then I sent it to the guys, and like, "Oh, this is cool." And Eric put it to some of the footage he'd been shooting, and I was like, "It
Wow.
actually sounds pretty cool." And I'm like, and at the time, we were just going to put this out. Like, we were going to have Justin Osborne, one of our artists, do artwork for it, and we were just going to do this. And I'm like, I really want to make a song. Like, and I just gotten this new MIDI keyboard, and I was getting back into, like, I guess production, if you will, on my computer. And I'm like, this is going to be a thing I'm going to do. Like, I'm just going to do it. And I started writing more of the song, and I ported over the GarageBand tracks just so I could have what I was using, and wrote this one song that, excuse me,
Bless.
wrote this one song that's, the Pyromaniac main theme. And then I was like, oh, and then I had this other idea. It was almost like the chase theme, which I ended up calling like the end credit theme. And I don't know, I just started writing, and it felt really good to like be doing something just truly creative, because like these days, I most of my time is running the business, and I mean, I don't do any of the design work anymore. And even though I come up with ideas, as with a lot of people that work with me do, and our artists, and I have to look at everything and give notes and all that, that's creative. But I'm not actually getting my hands dirty much anymore of anything. I'm just, running it. So being able to create something and make a song, and having a beginning and an end, and all of that. And look, I'm not saying it's the best thing ever, it's not Mozart here, but like for me, it was gratifying. For me, it was the act of creating something, and being able to do that, and then have it be put in like this cool trailer that Eric was shooting with us. And I got to act in it, and I was the Pyromaniac a bit, and we got a friend of ours, Dalton Castle, who was a wrestler, to be in it. And it was just so fun to do this and watch it come together. And then we're like, all right, and it's funny because I thought, okay, we'll put out as a product, we'll put out the soundtrack on vinyl. And I actually told Tansky and Eric, I was like, I don't know if I want to do that. I think, maybe we don't do that. And Tansky was like, that was the whole point. Put it out. Like, put it out on vinyl. Like, do it. Like, make it a real physical thing, just like the artwork on a t-shirt. I was just getting like kind of cold feet, because I was like, no one's gonna want this. Like, it just seemed a little like, I don't know. It felt weird, like imposter syndrome type of stuff.
Right.
And then we put it out, and look, it's sold pretty good. I'm not gonna lie. Like, we still have them, but like it it, and it came out really good too. Yeah.
Here it is, baby. Of course I
Look at
bought it.
this thing. Look at
Mike, look at this. Where
Show me the
there's
back.
smoke,
Show me the back, Rob. I gotta see
where
the back.
there's smoke, there's pyromaniac. And
Pyromaniac.
we didn't start the fire, he did.
That's me in the outfit right there too.
No
That's
shit.
me. That's me in front of legitimately a 20-foot fire. And our landlord who owns our building, he has a huge plot of land. And Eric and I went out there one night, and he put up a huge bonfire for us, and we shot a bunch of stuff there.
Oh, that looks phenomenal, Ben.
Yeah. It's really
Thanks.
cool.
All right, I'm gonna grab one.
Yeah, and I mean it's cool. It's two pieces of music, and it's really cool. And Ben, I don't think I've told you this story yet. I told it to Chris Tansky, but so I spent the entire month of January in Paris, France, with my
Yeah.
partner, and there's a great store there called Metaluna. It's kind of like the one. I mean, there's a few stores, but this is the one where the owner's sitting there smoking cigarettes and arguing with
Great.
movie fans about stuff. But they have physical media. It's the one place you could find imports, which is like Severin and Arrow and all that stuff. But anyways, I'm looking at the shelves and everything, and I see. And again, I've never even heard the title Pyromaniac, so I thought it was so cool that you guys came up with
Mm.
this like fireman, whatever. So I'm looking at the shelves, and I see a movie that looks like it's from the 80s that's called Pyromaniac. And
Get
I'm like,
out.
I was like, what the hell is this? And so I pick it up, and I'm trying to read it, and it's in French. So I ask my partner, I was like, Alyssa, can you read this for me? Now, she's like, so apparently It's about a guy that when he was a kid, his mother would torture him by like burning him. So he grows up and now like flamethrowers girls or something.
Oh my
And I'm like,
God. That's
well,
wild.
that sounds awesome. Like, how have I never heard of
Yeah.
that movie? So I was tempted to buy it, but it was very expensive. And so I went home or to her place and I did research. It is only called Pyromaniac in France. It's the only place in the
Ah,
world that it has that title. It's actually Don't Go in the House, which is a terrible title
yes.
and a movie that I would have never watched otherwise
Oh,
if I had not
it's
heard that
horrible.
synopsis. But bless it, it's on
Yeah.
Tubi. So I
Is it?
immediately, yeah, it's on Tubi
Yeah.
in a pristine HD presentation. So I watched it immediately. It is definitely of its time. It is a guy that brings home girls and then flamethrowers them, even though you don't really see it. It's not good. It's kind of quirky, but as I told Tansky, I was like, yeah, but your Pyromaniac is a much better usage of that title. Like the only place it's cool in the world is France because they called it that. Like
Right,
it finally made me immediately want to see it because I'm like, oh, that's so cool. But yeah, don't go in the house. But
Don't watch it.
no
Don't watch. Don't
competition.
go in the house.
Don't watch, don't go in
Well,
the
it's
house. But
funny you
no
said
no
that.
Don't watch
competition.
that.
I had done we were researching that too, and I did because I had thought about it when you were mentioning that. I'm like, I know there was some movie called Pyromaniac, but it wasn't the name that we know it by. That
Yeah,
was it. It was Don't Go in the
yeah,
House. I totally forgot about that. That's so wild that you found it though. And I didn't know it was called that
yeah.
in France. I just knew it was some alternative title, but they never like anyway, everything I read, it didn't seem like they either used it or obviously it was a French title instead. But that's
Yeah.
it's wild because it's like, why wasn't that ever a movie? You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like,
yeah, yeah.
why
Well,
wasn't that ever a thing?
and he wasn't a fireman. That's the other thing is
Right,
like,
right,
you
right,
have the
No.
gimmick of the costume, which I think
right.
is kind of fun. Well, one thing I wanted to touch upon is that I thought was interesting this is kind of a continuation of a conversation you and I had kind of privately, which is kind of your feelings on horror fandom today. And what I
Mm,
mean by that is are we, and I mean we as in people of our age group,
yep.
are we your primary clientele, or are young people still interested in horror, or specifically are young people interested in classic horror? And what I mean by that is we were talking about something like Sinners, right? That is inarguably a huge hit. It was a cultural moment. A lot of people went to see it beyond the normal horror fans. It became I mean, it's got all these Oscar nominations, but we were contemplating, okay, in 3 years, can you do Sinners t-shirts? Will
Hmm.
anyone care? Does modern horror have the resonance that the things that we grew up on do, or is it just like because again, you could do a Halloween 3 shirt tomorrow and it'll probably sell like hotcakes as always.
Yep.
So, how do you feel about modern horror, its impact versus kind of again doing classic horror shirts? And by classic horror, now I'm talking about the '80s. So I'm not even talking
Right,
about the
right,
Universal monsters.
right.
Yeah. What do you think?
This all the time, and I know you and I talked about this. It's
Mhm.
like Sinners is a great example. In fact, I did see a Sinners shirt at Hot Topic, which I thought was interesting. But it's a great example because that movie was incredible. I love that movie. And knowing what I know about licensing and everything, it's like, okay, if we even got the license, we wouldn't be able to do anything that we would want to do because we wouldn't be able to use likenesses. Now, the shirt that I saw at Hot Topic had likenesses, but that was an asset they were given. That was an approved image. Well, say there's a few of those, okay, fine, but now you're spending a lot of money for that license and you have to sell a lot of product to make it worth it. And if we're only going to be able to use a handful of images, how is that going to make sense? And like you said, that movie resonated with us and a lot of people, but people have moved on because there's been 100 other horror movies that have been released since then. And I think I love today because there's never been more horror out there. And it kills me when anybody ever says like, if there's a remake of something or a reboot, it's like, Hollywood do something original. It's like there's original things happening every single day. Like get a Shutter subscription. You're gonna see foreign horror. You're going to see all indie horror. You're going to see all of this horror that it's coming out of your eyeballs. Like it's just it's
Yep.
so much out there, and whatever. People are going to complain about everything, but the problem is for me, or the issue with that is how much of is it merchandisable in the sense that it makes sense to spend a lot of money for the rights to do something and try to make it work, you know? And certain movies break through for sure. Terrifier, for I know you're not a huge fan of Terrifier, but it it just for whatever reason struck a chord with people and it sells.
Mhm.
You don't have to like it, you don't have to, whatever. It just does, period. But then there's other movies, I mean, Terrifier, Art the Clown's the new Freddy, the new Jason. He just is. And because we don't really have that right now. Like, and I'm not counting the Angry Orchard Jason Universe one, sorry, but like, we don't have that. Like when we had the Halloween movies, the new ones, 2018 and Kills and
Mhm.
Ends, those sold great. Well,
Mm.
Halloween Ends did until the movie came out, unfortunately. But that's because it was Michael Myers.
Yeah.
People were attached to that. But new movies, as great as they are, they come and they go, and it's the slot is filled. And now it's the new movie coming out. Is anybody thinking about like, a movie that came out last year that was really great that I'm sure we all loved? Is anybody watching that again? Like I mean, movies have rewatchability and things, but like if
Mhm.
it's not attached to something that's been around for decades, it is harder to grab hold of people to want to buy
Right.
merchandise for it because that's a whole other part of the equation. When
Yeah.
we were kids, we were watching those movies how many times in a row because we rented
Yeah.
it. We had we had 2 days with it. We go back to the, movie store and grab another movie and do that. Nowadays, it's just boom, 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 boom. It just doesn't stop.
Yeah.
And that's great for content, but that's not great for like finding something that's worth plunking down a lot of money. I mean, I'll tell you this, and you can look at me and be like, yeah, I could have told you this already. But like, look, we did a deal for The Crow 2024. And this was a movie that was based on a beloved property that we've done the original Crow from 94 for a long time. One of my favorite movies. I love it. Love Brandon Lee. I love the merchandise sold well. And then 2024, the movie gets sort of announced that Bill Skarsgård's gonna be in it, and it's of course the anniversary. And I'm thinking to myself, well, love Bill Skarsgård. He's gonna have to do a good job with this. Now, I hadn't seen anything, nothing, hadn't seen anything, but you got to get on this stuff early. We did a deal with a company for this title, and we plunked down more money than I would have wanted to, but I was like, we want to be the ones getting in on this, And we were talking to Hot Topic, and we were going to have this whole program ready to go. And I swear, the ink wasn't even dry in the deal, and they released one image of him as Eric Draven, and people just obliterated it. And now I'm like, we're screwed. We're screwed. I mean, we had to do something. We had to put something out there. The approval process was a mess, complete mess. And then we finally put the stuff out, and of course they didn't. I mean, people were angry at us for doing it,
Mm.
like actually angry at us for doing that. And I'm out all this money. I just made product. I spent time, energy, all. How many times I can't afford to do that all the time for new movies,
Yeah.
Like it's not worth it. So it's hard. It's real hard.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you can do an original Crow, sure, a new edition of that, and hopefully that'll
Exactly.
even out the costs.
Yeah.
Well, before we wrap up, let's go back to the very beginning because I don't know. I mean, you probably said this on other podcasts and stuff before, but I don't know. I mean, we're always fascinated by the earliest horror recollections, the things that made us Universal monsters, Freddy, whatever. What was it for you? What lit your imagination? What was the spark? What was the first thing that really scared you and made you a lifelong horror fan?
I mean, it was Friday, October 30th, 1981. That was when Halloween was on the NBC movie of the night, weekly movie, and that was the first time it was ever aired. I mean, that was, I was 4 years old, and when I used to live in the city around the corner, there was a family deli, and they lived like above the deli and in the back, you know what I mean? Like typical old Italian, deli, and they were good friends of ours. And they were having a party, like a Halloween party, and I'm the youngest of four, so it was my two older brothers and my sister. We go over there, and they had kids too that they were closer to my brothers and my sister's ages. They didn't have a kid that was like my age. And my parents are, I think they were sitting around drinking coffee, playing cards or whatever. And my brothers and sister were off doing something. And I was bored and I wanted to go home. And my mom was like, go watch TV. You know, like that's what you did in the 80s. Go sit down and watch TV. And I literally just, I remember sitting down in front of this big console TV and Halloween came on. I mean, it was like 8 o'clock or whatever they showed it. And I sat there and I watched it. And I was probably like 2 feet away from the TV the entire time. And I don't think they realized what I was watching. I don't think they paid attention. And it was one of those moments. It's funny to think because you're four. So, I mean, it's not like it's not like a photographic memory, except for the fact that there's certain moments that I remember. I mean, I distinctly remember the closet scene, distinctly, and I remember other elements. In fact, I remember enough of it because when I would rent it later as a kid, I was like, "Where's that boardroom scene? Where's that,
Oh,
the scene in the house and
Yeah.
or in the hospital?" I mean, I thought I was going crazy until the mid 90s when HalloweenMovies.com, I think, put up the actual images when they put out the Laserdisc because I'm
yeah.
like, I remember something about this movie, but there was no information out there, you know? So I definitely, it imprinted itself like on me to the point where, and that was early days of home video. We had just gotten a Betamax because where I live in Rochester, it was one of the cities where they had like the format wars, so it was beta and VHS, so they were both available. And we had a beta for several years, but I would go, I mean, there was only mom and pop stores. We didn't have a Blockbuster or anything like that at the time. And we would go around to the different places and I would just look at, and I just wanted some guy in a mask killing teenagers. That's what I wanted to see. Like, I watched other movies, other horror movies, but I wanted more slashers. So I would just watch anything that looked like it could be that way or anything that looked cool, which all the, covers looked cool. Um, but it was Halloween, man. That was the movie that just, it's weird to say it changed me, but like I think it set me on a course. I think it just like boom, like just nudged me into this way where I went into this direction and forever, you know?
Yeah. Wow. At 4 years old too. Like what
Wow.
Yeah.
a Well, you know what's funny? I can't remember if I sent it to you or not. I definitely sent it to Tansky, but Halloween's a movie I've seen like a million times at this point. But last year, somebody on YouTube had recreated that 1981 screening, complete with the commercials and everything. And it's
Yes.
kind of
Yeah.
like it looks like it's an old V, like you recorded on a VHS. It's very meticulously done and beautifully like put together. And that was the way I watched it October of 2025 because I felt like I just wanted to see it in a different context.
Yes.
Sometimes you go to the TV cut for those extra scenes, but there is a great YouTube video that recreates that 1981 broadcast that I strongly recommend everyone seek out. I'm sure you'll find it if you search on YouTube pretty quickly. But well, Ben, this was really cool. I mean, we've Icons of Fright and Fright Rags have been around just about as the same time as long.
Yep.
And it's always great to see what you guys are up to. Again, right now I'm going to promote the Pyromaniac record because I think it's really cool. But
Thanks.
yeah, I mean, we appreciate you taking the time out. And, everyone watching this, go to fright-rags.com, check out what kind of cool stuff they have. And also, reminder Icons of Fright 100 Interviews with Legendary Horror Filmmakers is now on hardcover, paperback, and Kindle. Check it out, and we will see you soon. Thanks, everybody.
They thought it was safe. What they didn't realize, he came to burn it all down. They call him Pyromaniac.
We did didn't start this fire. He did, and if this maniac isn't caught, he's gonna burn us off the face of the map.
He could be anywhere. Or anyone. And when he finds you, you'll be left scorched. Prepare all you want. Read the tarot cards. But he won't stop. This October, taste the fire. Pyromaniac, coming soon from Fandom Films.
If I may, people, please check and change the batteries in your smoke detectors.
Is your home library feeling a little dull? Spice it up with some scary good books from Harker Press. We've got books on your favorite franchises and filmmakers loaded with new interviews and never-before-seen photos, many of which are also available on Audible. Learn more at harkerpress.com.